have a question for you. Why do movies have this disclaimer? Yep, you've seen this a lot more than you think you have, mainly due to the fact that this has been a disclaimer placed in a lot of Hollywood movies, TV shows, and in many, many novels in recent years. And there's a very, very good reason for this, which many people don't actually know why this thing's even a disclaimer in the first place. And today, we're going to dive deeper into this topic to find out why on earth people are so insistent of having this disclaimer in their projects. Hello! Welcome to Brainspill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and I know what you're thinking. Why is this a thing? How is this such a common turn of phrase? I mean, something must have happened for this disclaimer to be such a common thing, and you'd be correct. This reminds me of that one time that I went to a bar, went to the DJ booth and saw a sign put up saying that this bar does not accept requests for the song Shipping Up to Boston by the Dropkick Murphys. Now, very strange sign indeed, and for anybody that knows the song, it can get pretty rowdy. It only makes you wonder what the hell happened beforehand to make this a rule and for that sign to even exist. That is the same principle we're dealing with today when it comes to this movie disclaimer. So, for those of you wondering, it has some variation of this, basically saying that anybody in the film is fictional, and if they have any resemblance to anybody in real life, it's just coincidental. You know, if it actually is or not, but the disclaimer's there to kind of cover all bases. As you might imagine, the main purpose behind this is to fend off potential litigation, which is correct, and is the primary reason why this thing is in a lot of movies. But what was the one thing to trigger this, to make this such a popular use of a disclaimer? I mean, basically, it must have had a profound effect for everybody to use it, so what the hell was it? Anyone who feels like filing a lawsuit for libel might be fended off by such a disclaimer. But how did this all come about? And why are filmmakers now so cautious to make sure this disclaimer is present wherever it is needed? It seems to have originated as a response to a suit against the makers of a 1932 movie called Rasputin and the Empress. The movie was about a man called Rasputin, a peasant become mystical healer and lover. Look, the man deserves an entire video himself, and I'm going to be straight up with you guys. He's on the list. I have an absolutely huge list of video ideas that I want to get through, and he is on the list. I'm going to make a video on him one day in the future. Don't know when. Maybe if you want to see more, then let me know in the comments, but sometime. So we will go over this briefly, but not in any vast detail, just enough to get a good understanding of what actually happened and why this is so important for this movie. Yes, this man led a crazy, crazy life. What you need to know for today's video is that he managed to gain incredible influence over the Russian imperial family, a man who managed to break his way into the highest echelons of Russian royalty. The story of this guy is pretty incredible, all the way from his mystical powers to the many, many assassination attempts made on his life, to which he miraculously survived nearly all of them. This was the perfect idea for a movie. Oh yeah, so I should mention that this guy, like I said, was subject to many, many assassination attempts, mainly by conservative aristocrats who kinda hated the guy, and he somehow managed to cheat death again and again and again. Led by an aristocrat called Felix Yusupov, the assassinations in the real world occurred round and about 1916. So, just a few years later, in the year 1932, MGM decided that this would be a fantastic plot for a film, and decided to use basically everything that happened in this guy's life to make a full feature-length movie out of it. Fantastic. I imagine there's going to be absolutely no problems with that whatsoever. Seemed as though that Rasputin had barely been dead for a couple of decades at this point. This movie had an absolutely huge budget, going so far to try and recreate the Imperial Russia, as you can imagine, which was a huge, huge effort. MGM made a number of big changes, such as suggesting that there was just one assassin, an entirely fictitious made-up man called Prince Shekadev, who was basically a new character created as an amalgamation of all the actual assassination attempts made on the life of Rasputin during his life. Almost like a best-of compilation tied up into one character arc of this movie. So yes, that's one creative change they decided to make. Fair enough, if you want to make a movie interesting, maybe make a few tweaks. But the problem is when things get a little bit more serious. So much so that MGM decided to try and rewrite history by claiming that the wife of the assassin in the movie, a character called Natasha, was assaulted by Rasputin. This is something that never happened in real life, but they decided to put it in to try and make Rasputin more of a villain character throughout the movie. I mean, look, sure, I am not the kind of person to try and dissuade people from making creative decisions about movies they're making to try and make it more engaging and interesting. But if you're basing this on real life, particularly if it's something that happened recently, at the time, you might want to be quite careful because, that might come back to bite you later on. Anywho, the reason for this, as described by MGM's creative head Irving Thalberg, was to contrast Rasputin with the Tsar, and trying to make the Tsar a much more likeable character. So yeah, that's one way to do it. Just make the Tsar really likeable in comparison to that big meanie Rasputin. The comparison is gleamingly clear, and I don't think that they could have just made the Tsar a more likeable character. They had to make Rasputin bad in comparison to even make the Tsar likeable. I mean, there seems to be a few problems there, but you be the judge of that. The craziest thing about all of this was that this whole thing wasn't even a surprise because MGM had a number of researchers working with them for the movie to make sure that everything was as historically accurate as possible. And a researcher made a comment to them which maybe the legal team should have been a little bit more alive to. Yes, this is due to the fact that one of the researchers hired for the movie even warned the creative director of MGM that the current wife of Yusupov, who was still alive by the way, the guy who led the assassinations against Rasputin in real life, could be mistaken for Natasha in the movie. Things are getting a little bit more heated in here now. Yusupov claimed that the movie was defamatory. The problem for him, however, was that he'd actually confessed to the assassination plots in his memoir a few years earlier, so he was kind of shit out of luck here. His wife, however, had a bit more grounding on her allegations. Yes, his real-life wife, Irina, argued that the character Natasha had many features and characteristics that could be drawn very, very similar to her, almost like that the character of Natasha was based on Irina. The woman that Rasputin assaulted in the movie, something that never happened in real life, but for anybody that knows the people here, they might put two and two together and then Bob's your uncle. That same defamation argument arose again, and MGM on this occasion were in a little bit more of a sticky position. But don't worry guys, because they had that infamous disclaimer in place. Actually they didn't. It is as a result of all this that the disclaimer came to be. They had a rather different disclaimer at the prologue of the movie, which kind of shot them in the foot a little bit. It read as follows. A few of these characters are still alive. The rest met death by violence. The lawyers should have been all over this, beating MGM with sticks to make them realise what an absolute fuck up they'd just made. So yeah, this basically said that everyone in the movie was real, including the fact of the clearly fake character and his wife, who was seemingly similar to that of the wife of the actual assassin in real life. Sweet baby Jesus of mercy. A claim was issued through the English courts, and it was argued that Yusupov's wife could be identified as Natasha in the movie due to Natasha's relation with the fake character made up in the movie, the assassin who basically made all of the assassination plots against Rasputin, which just so happened to be the exact assassination plots that Yusupov did in real life against Rasputin. The same ones that he had in a few years prior already admitted to doing in his memoir. And in addition to this, MGM also didn't do any favours due to the fact that Natasha looked awfully similar to Irina, based on the fact that they gave her the same body structure, same facial features, and, well, basically made it the same person. So they weren't really getting out of this one very easily. Just to top it all off, the characters were the exact same age. So, yeah. As you might imagine, the decision went the only way which you think it would go. because the jury made a decision in 30 minutes of hearing the evidence and decided that MGM were guilty of libel, with an order of £25,000, or at the time $125,000. That is equal to about $2.5 million today. That is a nasty blow, even by MGM standards. Yes, so this whole thing happened, and due to an absolute mess up by many people running the film and the disclaimer they placed at the start, they thought that maybe they need something else to be a little bit more foolproof in the future. And the solution came when the Chief Justice made comment on the outcome of the case, basically saying that this entire saga could have been avoided if they used the appropriate disclaimer to basically say that everybody in the movie were basically fictitious and made up, not based on anybody in real life. Hence the reason why you see this disclaimer in nearly every single TV show and movie that you've ever seen. The one big example that I always go back to when thinking about this disclaimer is this one, which you've probably seen at the start of every single episode of South Park. And the reason they have this on, as you can imagine, is to avoid lawsuits. Because of the fact that the show take the piss out of many pop culture icons and celebrities, they need something to give them a little bit of legal backing to try and make sure that they don't get sued into the ground, hence the reason why they've gone strong for many, many years. So, to answer the question at the very start of the video, why does every single movie have this disclaimer? Well, the simple answer is money. Companies and businesses want to save money. They don't want to get sued. So, there you are. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. Guys, there's a few lessons to be learned here. Look, if you're a guy that wants to sue for defamation, maybe don't admit to all your assassination plots in a memoir a few years earlier, because that might scupper you a little bit. But, on the other hand, if you're a filmmaking company that wants to make a movie about something in real life, maybe just stick a random disclaimer at the start, you know, basically just to cover your own ass in case somebody decides to sue you. Just a bit of friendly advice there, not legal advice, because if we're talking about disclaimers, then I'm going to throw a disclaimer on this disclaimer to make sure that you've been disclaimed the entire way through this entire video that this is a disclaimer. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.